going to show you how to make this cable beanie, and I think I'm going to put a pom-pom on this one. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like. It's a really pretty, nice, thick braid, and I love how it came out. All right, let's make this hat. Okay. For this hat, I'm using the 48 peg loom with 5/8 inch gauge in between the pegs. You need a loom that is divisible by 8, so that's why I'm using 48. I think the only other one I guess you could use would be the 80 if you were using the very small gauge loom. You need something to mark your loom. I use stitch markers. If you don't have stitch markers, you can use a Sharpie, tape, you can use a piece of yarn, and we will probably wait till we do the brim and then we will mark our yarn, or you can use rubber bands. Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different because I'm going to do a 1x1 rib stitch, which means 1 E-wrap, 1 purl, 1 E-wrap, 1 purl. I'm going to go ahead and E-wrap the entire loom. Okay, when you get your entire loom wrapped, we're going to go ahead and wrap that first peg, and we're going to purl the second peg. So with our cast on, we are actually starting our rib stitch pattern. And this worked really well. I tried this one other time and I really liked it. So I'm going to E-wrap this peg. If you need slower videos on E-wrapping and purl, please head on over to Denise's Loom Hat YouTube channel, and you can put in how to do the purl stitch, how to do an E-wrap stitch, and she can show you a little bit slower version. You can also slow down YouTube and watch it at a slower speed. We're just going to purl, E-wrap 1 and purl 1, and you're going to make your brim anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches. I'd say maybe about 1.5 inches is really all you want it for this particular pattern. And then once you get your ribbed brim, we will start on the body of the hat. So I've got my brim about the length that I wanted. I believe I did 10 rows. So before we move on to do the cabling, you may want to mark your loom. I use these little markers that I got from Michael's. You can pick them up at Joann's, Michael's. I like them because they're easy to put on and easy to take off, and I'm not going to grab them when I go to grab my yarn. Some people use the little rainbow loom rubber bands, but I find they get in the way of my pick if I'm trying to pick up my yarn. So here's how we're going to mark our loom. Okay, so this is our peg 1. So we're going to count off 6 pegs. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to be purling these 2 pegs. So you want to count 6 and then mark off pegs 7 and 8. Count 6 pegs, mark pegs 7 and 8. And that way you know which ones you're going to purl. So our cable is going to take place across these 6 pegs, and then we will purl 2. So we're going to cable and purl 2. So go ahead and mark your loom before we start the cabling. So for our very first row, after you have your stitch markers in place, we're going to E-wrap 6, purl 2. E-wrap 6, purl 2. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and you should be purling the 2 where you have your stitch markers. Okay, this is round 1 of your cabling. So E-wrap 6, purl 2 all the way around, and we will start on round 2 next. This is where we're going to start round 2, and this will be the start of our left cable cross, which will take place on the left-hand side of these 6 pegs. So for pegs 1 and 2, we're going to wrap it twice. So wrap twice, and then we're only going to wrap these 1 time. 4, 5, and 6, we only wrap, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we only wrap once. So 2 wraps on pegs 1 and 2, then single wraps, E-wraps on pegs 3 through 6. Okay, and then we're going to do our purls. And we're going to do this all the way around the loom as well. because everywhere we have these 6 pegs, we're going to do a cable braid. So again, here's pegs 1 and 2. We're going to wrap twice. We're going to go once, twice. Then the next 4 pegs only get wrapped once. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to purl. So continue that around the loom and meet me back for round 3. On this round, when you go to lift off the loops on the ones that have 2 stitches, you only want to lift the bottom loop over the top 2. So we're going to go around and only lift off the bottom for the ones that have 2 loops on them. So go around and leave the top loops on, only lift the bottom one over, and meet me back. I'm going to show round 3 now that I've done it a few times and I think I've got a little better handle on it. So your first 2 pegs in the 6 peg cable section will have the two loops on them. You're going to take off the top loop, take the top loop off of this one, and then we're going to pull those like that, okay, so that they're nice and loose. Then we'll take our stitch holder and we'll take off stitch 2 and stitch 1 like that and put those to the back of your work, okay? Now you're going to take your yarn to the inside. Now you'll take your yarn to the inside and we're going to E-wrap pegs 3 and peg 4. That will now make these stitches really loose and we'll be able to move them over, okay? So I'm going to take stitch on peg 3 and move it over to peg 1. Then I'm going to take the stitch on peg 4 and move it over to peg 2. Now, before you swap these stitches, you want to make sure this is nice and tight. Okay, so tighten up these stitches. Okay, now we're going to place these 2 stitches on these 2 pegs. Before we take off these stitches, you want to make sure your working yarn is down here. Here's your last peg that you worked. Take the first stitch off. You're going to put that on peg 3. Okay. Then you're going to E-wrap it. Okay. So I'm going to put the stitch on there and then I'm going to E-wrap it. I'm going to leave my working yarn right where it is, right in between those 2 pegs. And I'm going to bring this second stitch and put it on peg 4. Now, same thing here. I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to E-wrap that peg. Then, before you move on, you want to make sure these are all nice and tight. So, pull these to tighten them. Okay. Okay, just make sure those are nice and tight. And then all we're going to do for the last 2 pegs is E-wrap, and then we're going to purl these 2 with the markers on them. And that's all you do, and you're just going to repeat that for round 3 all the way around the loom. Finish that and meet me back. Our cable, and it will be just like the first one. We're simply going to go around and E-wrap 6 pegs and purl 2. So E-wrap 6, purl 2 for round 4 all the way around, and meet me back for round 5 where we will start our right cable cross. All right, so for round 5 we're going to do the opposite of what we did in round 2. So remember in round 2 we did 2 wraps, and then single wraps on the rest. We're going to do just the opposite. So for this round we're going to do single, single, and then on pegs 3 and 4 we're going to do double wraps, and then just a single for 5 and 6. Okay, and then purl 2 pegs, 2 pegs. Okay, so once again, pegs 1 and 2, single wrap, pegs 3 and 4, get wrapped twice. It's peg 3, peg 4, peg 5 and 6 once, and purl. And once again, when we come back around, we're only going to lift off the very bottom loop, leaving the top 2 loops. Okay, we're on round 6. All right, I've already done one because I wanted to practice it since this is also new to me. All right, we'll do that again. So here are our 6 stitches. So we're going to E-wrap the first 2. Okay. And then these 2 have these extra stitches on them. So pop the top stitch off of that. And then you want to loosen your stitches and also loosen these last 2. And I will be speaking of these as pegs 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. If you want to, I don't want to think of them as 3, 4, 5, and 6 because it gets too confusing. So we're just going to say pegs 1, 2, 3, and 4. So after you have loosened these 4, we're going to take our working yarn behind the first 2 and we're going to E-wrap pegs 3 and peg 4. Okay, and your yarn's going to be loose and that's fine. Okay, then you're going to take your stitch holder, whatever it may be, and pick up stitch 4 and then stitch 3. Okay, lay them to the center, toward the center of the loom. Okay, now you're going to bring your working yarn behind and I'm trying to do this so my fingers aren't in the way. We're going to come around this direction to wrap peg 1 because that would be an E-wrap, and then we're going to wrap peg 2 like so. Okay, so that's a little bit different way to do it. Now we want to take the loops on these 2 pegs and move them over to these 2. However it's easiest for you. I find with my fingers is easy. So also going to move, make sure my working yarn is way over here. I'm going to move this stitch to peg 4 and I'm going to move this one over to 3. Okay, then I still have my 2 on my holder, and so those need to go on these 2 respectively. Okay, take stitch 3 and place it onto peg 1. Make sure I have my yarn right, and then I'm going to take stitch 4 and place it onto peg 2. And then I'm just going to make sure that I didn't get the plies of my yarn crossed. Okay, so now that we've done the swap, we're going to tighten up all these stitches. You want to make sure you get all of your stitches from your cable tightened really nicely because we have a lot of slack in that last right cable cross. Okay. All right, and then we're going to do our 2 purls and we're going to repeat that all the way around the loom. That will conclude the entirety of the left cable cross and the right cable cross. So you will repeat those 6 rows that we just did over and over until you get your hat the length that you want it, and you should have a nice crossed cable braid. For the bind off, I used my usual flat drawstring bind off, which I did 2 rows of 2 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit, 2 purl, and then closed it. I have a flat drawstring bind off video that you can go to on my YouTube channel and look at that if you need to reference that for the bind off. I also did it on the modified figure 8 spiral hat as well.